Chapter 10. Proposal. 3 days later, in the early hours of the morning just before sunrise, he dreamed he was sitting on top of the temple rocks, watching the sunset, the sky ablaze with reds and oranges. Next to him sat his wife, Rebecca, and behind them sat another woman he couldn't see, but he knew she was there. At first he didn't know who she was, then something told him that it was the goddess of all creation. "Why are you here?" he asked them both. This was the first time the goddess had come to him in his dreams, but Rebecca had come to him from time to time when Johnny needed her most. "I want to tell you to be careful, but you already know the risks," Rebecca said as she continued to stare out at the landscape. The goddess didn't seem to be inclined to answer his question, at least not yet. He wanted to embrace his dead wife, but in his dreams he never could. Somehow the effort of reaching out to her was too much, so all he could do was sit quietly and look at her while they talked. "I love you with every fiber of my being," Rebecca said sadly. "I watched over you for years, and I hoped you would eventually find someone else who makes you happy. I'm not sure I can just now," Johnny said as he looked at her longingly. "I love you and our daughter, and I still miss you both very much. There's also the predicament I'm in. Women would laugh at me if they found out about Elena's spell." "Then find a woman who won't laugh at you," she said as she half turned her face towards him before looking back at the sunset. She never looked at him directly in his dreams, and Johnny never understood why. He guessed it had to do with her being dead and no longer part of this world. Maybe her eyes were dangerous somehow, and she was only protecting him, or herself, or perhaps both of them. "Who, then?" Johnny asked. He understood that he was giving him permission to marry again. "It's not for me to tell you," she replied as the soft breeze ruffled her hair. "You'll find her on your own." "All right," Johnny said, accepting her answer. He knew that arguing with her was pointless, so he didn't bother to try. He asked the goddess, "Why did you tell me to go swim when I was already going to do it?" Rebecca answered, the goddess speaking through her. "I knew that you would find a solution on your own. All you needed was some encouragement." He wanted to look back at her, but he couldn't. The same force that kept him from touching his wife also kept him from even being able to make an effort to turn around. He said, "You always seem to help everyone around me, but not me. Why? Haven't I suffered enough?" The presence shifted a bit to make herself more comfortable on the warm, flat stones. Johnny heard the rustle of fabric, like skirts being readjusted. Still being the goddess's medium, Rebecca said, "You're not the only one who's asked such questions, and you're not the only one who suffers. It's just one of the consequences of free will and relatively fragile condition of living. It's just the way things have to be. I can help when I can, but often the best way I can help is not to interfere." There was no apology in her voice, no regret. She just stated the facts point blank. Johnny wondered if the goddess had any heart at all. "I do," the Rebecca goddess said, in answer to his doubts about her. "I love you, Jonathan. I love your compassion and your strength. Whatever you choose to do, I'll be with you, even when it seems like I ignored you. Never forget that." Johnny bowed his head in acknowledgement, wishing he could just turn around and look at the being behind him. Part of him accepted her word and loved her too. Another part of him was angry, hurt, and he wanted to shout at her, venting all his hurts and indignities he had suffered as if it was her fault. But she had given him a truthful explanation, and like it or not, it was more than most people got. "You can yell at me and be angry with me if you want," Rebecca, as the goddess, responded to his thought. She smiled sadly with a mix of sympathy and compassion. "It won't change a thing. You'll still have to go on living, and I'll still keep on loving you." "Sorry, I can't help being angry with you," Johnny apologized to the goddess. "I don't want to, but I am anyway." "It's all right." Rebecca's voice was full of love and forgiveness. Then the goddess did something even more surprising than showing up to speak with him. She reached out her own hand and stroked his head ever so gently in a gesture of absolute love, just for a moment, before pulling away. Her presence and her touch felt warm and good, and it lingered even after she had removed her hand. Some of the pain his life had inflicted on him and that he carried in his heart like an old aching scars faded a bit. They were not gone, just easier to bear. Johnny again wanted to turn and look back, but still couldn't. "I love you, my desert rat," Rebecca said as herself, as a single tear fell down her cheek. She almost turned to him again, then looked back at the sun that seemed suspended in time, for it remained unchanged the whole time they had been sitting there. "This will be the last time you and I can dream together, but we will see each other again, so this isn't really goodbye, just till we meet again." Johnny woke up with a start. The first things he noticed was his window was just beginning to lighten, and he had a terrible urge to urinate. He tried to roll over and sit up, only to find little girl, no, Precious, he corrected himself, in full dragon form, sleeping pressed back to him. Johnny smiled and flipped over to his other side and stroked her feather mane, partly in affection, partly to gently wake her up so he could go to the bathroom. She had been depressed and angry these past few days because of what she had learned from the charm. Elena didn't allow her to see everything. There was an age block on most of the information there, so Precious could not see her mother's capture, torture, and training, which were almost one and the same. She did get to see her mother's life before her enslavement, and discovered she was a close cousin to Bronwyn through her mother's youngest sister's grandchild. It was not until Precious learned of this and told Bronwyn that the dragons had no idea where Tia had gone. They had searched for her everywhere for months. Precious had seen her mother lay 2 eggs and tried to put them into her pouch like a good mother dragon should. The stable master had been watching and forced her to give them up so they would not be damaged during the fights in the ring. Zapping her with a cattle prod and threatening to cut off her wings if she didn't obey, she bared her teeth at him. Poor broken-spirited Tia didn't have much fight left in her when the one she was trying to fight was her master. Tia had cried and cried, Master, please! Master, please! Give me back my precious babies! Aye, Master, please! Shut up, I'll smash them right now, you stupid animal! The stable master snarled back as he carried the eggs off into the incubator he had waiting for them. She did as she was bidden, as she rocked miserably back and forth and wept silently and kept repeating in dragon speak, my precious babies, no, no, no. She lost the fight in the gladiator ring that very night, too heartbroken to keep her head in the game and stay alive. A big troll slave she was fighting managed to club her over the head and killing her in one blow after a long and bloody battle. The little girl didn't actually see the fight or her dead mother. She just heard the stablemaster cursing and swearing about it to his staff as they went out to drag the corpse out of the ring with a dozen oxen and some ropes. The gladiator stablemaster was furious at the loss of his dragon, who he knew should have won the fight. He took care of the eggs, but he was no substitute for a real dragon mother. Only 1 egg hatched, and she was eventually won in a bet by Johnny. The little girl never really got a name from her mother. She was never given the chance. After she came out of the dream, she roared, screamed, and cried in fury. She hated the stablemaster. She wanted to kill him for what she did to her mother, and vowed that someday she would find a way. She was angry with the troll that made the killing blow, but she didn't want to end him. Like her mother, he was given no choice because he too was a slave, so she mostly forgave him. She was also deeply morose because the one individual that she wanted to name her didn't get to. But she remembered her mother had chanted over and over again, my precious, my precious, my precious babies, no, no, no. That was as close as being named her babies ever came. So as soon as the little girl managed to get her wits back together, with a lot of help from her family, she declared that her name was Precious. If anyone still wanted to call her little girl, that was fine, so long as they didn't forget her true name. She now kept her charm in a trinket box, where she kept small things that she found attractive. The memories in that charm had given her nightmares in spite of Elena's efforts to protect her from the worst of it. So for the last 3 nights, she had been sneaking to Johnny's bed while he slept. She was slowly recovering. Nothing kept this girl down for long, Johnny thought to himself proudly as he continued to pet his sleeping daughter. Baby, wake up, he said as he began to shake her gently. This caused his bed to shake and make him have to go even worse. Precious, little girl, wake up, love. Grrr, she growled grumpily and stretched like a cat, one wing accidentally smacking Johnny in the face as she flexed those 2. Johnny Raspberries, he got a mouthful of feathers. Realizing her mistake, Precious snorted and rolled off the bed with her wings tightly closed. Then she turned her head and laid her jaws on the blankets to look up at Johnny with her big golden eyes apologetically. Apology accepted, Johnny said as he wiped his mouth, which now tasted of feathers. Scoot, kid. I need to use the toilet. Oomph, she acknowledged and jumped her foreparts onto the bed so she could turn around the narrow space more easily. Then she headed out the side door to use the dirt outside while Johnny used the toilet inside. Johnny peed, then brushed his teeth in the shower as it was his custom. He was discovering lately brushing up against himself while bathing aroused him almost every time. That usually didn't happen often as it did now, though there was nothing wrong with his work before this development. But he remembered that a pregnant woman's sexual appetites tend to increase as the months passed. Shrugging, he took care of the problem quietly, wishing he had a lover instead, and finished his shower. He kept his clothes stored in the drawers below the towel cabinet. He stored them there since that was the best place he could find in his cramped living quarters. It was also incidentally rather convenient to be able to wash and dress all in the same area. He opened a little hamper and charmed to clean whatever fabric and placed it in the used towel. He had thought of installing a washer and dryer, but there was just not enough room for them, and their presence would further tax the water recycling system. So he compensated with spells made by his mother and Noah to keep things clean by magic when technology was unavailable. As he dressed and brushed his hair, he thought of the dream he had, briefly touching the spot where the goddess had stroked his head. He smiled and decided that he would never tell anyone about this dream. It was nice to know the goddess loved him, even though Rebecca wouldn't or couldn't visit any more. That made him sad, but it also broke his heart to see her, yet not be able to stay with her. Not getting to talk with her till after he died made his heart ache all the more. He sighed and shook himself, mentally pulling himself together. No point in dwelling on old aches. To his surprise, the old ones still didn't hurt as much as they used to. Something in the goddess's touch in his dream helped him somehow, and its effects hadn't faded even after he had wakened. Johnny smiled and sent his mental prayer of gratitude to her. He didn't understand why the goddess had sent him that dream. Some of it was obvious, but most of it was not. He would have to think over it for a while, and maybe he would figure it out, which was likely the point of the dream anyway. He dropped a bone hairpin on the floor as he was pinning back his hair into a bun at the base of his skull. Holding his hair in place with one hand, he bent over to retrieve it. He discovered when he did so it was harder than it usually was, and his pants felt tighter than normal. He stood and finished pinning his hair up and decided to leave his head dress off for the time being. He didn't need to wear it while he ate breakfast. He turned to the full-length mirror, pulled up his tunic, and pulled down the front of his navy blue pants. He stared at his abdomen. It hadn't changed much so far, but he could see the beginnings of a baby bump. Turning sideways, he could see it even better. He touched it, feeling a firm swelling there. "Kid," he said to the baby, "you're the strangest cargo I've ever agreed to carry." He put his clothes back in order, stepped out of the bathroom to find Precious starting breakfast in full human form, not bothering to wear clothes now Ling wasn't looking. "Thanks," Johnny said as he smiled at her and gently nudged her aside to take over. "Your turn for a bath. Go on." The dragon went back into the bathroom as bidden. If he didn't insist that she bathed at least once a day, she would happily just roll in the dust and get herself clean that way, forgetting about using soap and water. That would be fine if she were living outside, but in his ship, it meant the dirt would wind up in her sheets and on the floor. "You get some clothes on. Grandma will be coming by later. I promise you can take them off once we get going." Precious looked at him and rolled her big brown eyes before stepping into the bathroom and closing the door so the steam wouldn't roll out into the kitchen. Today's breakfast turned out to be cream of wheat sweetened with generous amounts of honey, dried cranberries, pecans, and raisins. The little girl had set out the ingredients, so Johnny went ahead and cooked them. She also set a generous helping of raw cube steak for herself. She normally ate the same amount as a human child did, but now and again she would start to eat a lot more. This usually happened when she was getting ready for another growth spurt. When she did, she started to crave proteins all the time. Precious came out of the bathroom, her hair still damp, and headed for her sleeping area to get her clothes as Johnny was finishing serving up the 3 bowls of hot cereal for himself, his rat, and his daughter, when there was a knock at the door. "It's Aiko," Goldie said from her customary place on the floating table. She didn't touch her food right away because she liked it better when it cooled off, enough not to burn her tongue. She did, however, start lapping at the saucer of milk Johnny gave her. He went to get the door that was just past the end of the bench area. "Hello there." Aiko smiled and came in as Johnny stepped back to let her in. Then she said, "I have a proposal you might like." "Hello, Goldie." "Hello." Goldie greeted in return as she licked her lips free of milk. Aiko sat down behind Goldie, scooting over just far enough not to be directly behind the rat. She smiled and gestured for Johnny to sit down. He poured himself some mint tea and mixed with vanilla and honey. This was one of his favorite beverages, and he knew that it didn't contain caffeine, so it was safe for the baby. Johnny sat and asked as he privately became surprised with himself how accepting he had become about being pregnant. "What is your proposal?" "I want to come with you when you leave today," Aiko said as she looked at him directly in the eyes. "My sandship can't carry much cargo as yours can, but it's every bit as good a ship as the Dune Lady. I want to be your partner." "Mom put you up to this, didn't she?" Johnny snorted. It sounded like something she would do. Aiko's mouth twitched and she admitted, "She did, but I agreed with her." "Someone should watch your back?" "I can take care of myself," Johnny said. "You're not just taking care of yourself, Johnny. Normally that's just fine. You're a good father. But you aren't just running cargo anymore. You're trying to help Elena bring down Richard, and he has a warrant out for your arrest." "I had already given this some thought, and I've spoken to Precious and Goldie about this." Johnny interrupted her politely. "My daughter refused to stay with Bronwyn in spite of the danger, and Goldie, I also refuse to leave his side no matter what," Goldie said, speaking for herself. "I'm small compared to you humans, but I'm formidable in my own way." "Okay, but what about the baby?" Aiko insisted. "You're placing him in danger, too, by going." "What of your son?" Johnny countered. "You're planning to take him with you on your little adventure with me?" "No, I'm not," Aiko said firmly. Then she added more gently, "Nemaya has been asking for more time with his father, and he has agreed to look after him while I'm gone. So my baby will be safe. I gave him a contact mirror, and I have one so we can be in touch." "All right," Johnny said thoughtfully after he considered her offer. Aiko's company would be welcome, and an extra ship would be a nice addition to haul more cargo. Not everything he would be doing would be aimed at Richard. He planned to mostly return to his old business, letting others handle the bulk of the dirty work. He hoped it would be safer that way. "Good, thank you," Aiko said, looking pleased. Then she told him, looking concerned, "If Noah didn't have his own wife and children to look after, he would be going too. We're all worried about you. But you're stubborn as a dragon when you want to do something. You know I'm good a fighter and even better a businesswoman." Both assets you can use, especially in the coming months. How well do you think you could fight when you're 6 months pregnant? Or even 9 months pregnant? You won't be as quick on your feet with someone loyal to Richard sees through the illusions Mom made for you. You'll still need someone like me to help watch your back and maybe deliver the baby if we can't make it back in time. Johnny said, taken aback. That he might not be as physically able to handle threats to his person or his family as well as he normally did hadn't occurred to him. What if he got in a fight and his body was too awkward to do any serious damage to his enemies? He said, I'm glad you're coming within. Aiko smiled. Good, you stubborn fool. Just be sure to bring Rosie and Gracie, Johnny said. I found that a good rat is an invaluable companion for a cargo runner, and you have the good fortune of being adopted by 2 of them. I do not appreciate it, Goldie chuckled. Then she returned to eating her small bowl of hot cereal. They already insisted that they come, and they're waiting in my sand ship, Aiko said. Then she asked curiously as Johnny drank his tea and ate his breakfast, what does the illusion look like when you don't want someone to see you? Precious joined them, wearing her usual sandals and a pretty white blouse and a flowing red skirt. She scooted to her place, petting Goldie on her way. Goldie in turn gave her a gentle love bite before returning to her own food. Precious picked up her fork and stabbed one of the raw meat cubes and popped it into her mouth with relish. Aiko hugged her briefly, and Precious smiled up at her aunt while she chewed. Johnny, meanwhile, willed that they couldn't recognize him, so the spell would activate. All at the table stared at him, and Johnny grinned. He now resembled a round-faced, gray-eyed, black-bearded man 50 pounds heavier than he really was, with short, greasy black hair, bad teeth, and of Anglo-Arabic descent, which was quite common in the cities where he frequented. Testing the quality of the illusion, Aiko touched his face and probed his midriff. She could even feel the coarseness of his non-existent beard and the thickened waist. Most illusions didn't have any solidity, but Ling was so good at what she did that she could make the most improbable illusion seem very real. She's good, Aiko said, impressed. Aiko herself wanted to be a practitioner like her mother. She had learned everything she could, but the talent for magic mostly skipped her. Aiko was what some people called a one-spell wonder, which is a person who had the knack to cast only one spell. Ling didn't understand it, but she made sure that Aiko used her one spell to its best advantage. Aiko could teleport small objects to and from anywhere she happened to be. One of the non-magical spells Aiko did very well was fight with daggers. She threw them with amazing speed and accuracy, so she always kept a box full of them in her tent, or in her sandship, just in case she had need of them. So long as she had a ready supply of knives and knew where to find them, she could fling dagger after dagger, making her quite formidable in a fight. She also knew how to fight using techniques Johnny had taught her as they were growing up, because she had trouble with bullies when she was a girl. Now nobody dared to do her harm. Johnny willed him to see him as he really was, and then he was back to his lean and angular-featured self. Have you thought of a name for yourself? Aiko asked Johnny. Then she asked, what of Precious and Goldie? They're well-known companions of yours. I've chosen to call myself Tim Smith. It's a common enough name. As for the other 2 members of my crew, Mom's going to give them both charms, Johnny said. She's going to make Precious more round-faced and stockier with black hair and gray eyes, like my illusion. Then I can continue to claim she's my daughter, and no one will question it. All I have to do is remember to call her by her real name and never by her pet name, and Goldie's been getting a charm to make her look like a black dog. You and your rats can go as yourselves. You don't have a warrant out for your arrest, and Richard knows nothing of your existence. Sounds all right to me, Aiko agreed. It might help if I posed as your wife as well as your partner. It would make your guys more convincing. Are you sure you want to do that? Johnny asked. What if you see a man you fancy? As a married woman, you can't court him. I will just have to be a cheating wife, Aiko smiled wickedly. You don't have to be a loyal husband either, so if you find a woman you like, you can go charm her. That can work, Johnny agreed. Aiko almost said something else, only to pause and look at Precious and Goldie. Johnny noticed but said nothing. Whatever she had in mind she could say later, when they had some privacy, which seemed to be what she wanted. Precious sniffed at Aiko, then said, if you want him, I don't mind. He could use a woman's attentions. What? Do you think I'm too little to know such things? I can smell that you're interested in him. Aiko blushed and Johnny made a long-suffering sigh. He said, Sweetie, sometimes you have no tact. Precious furrowed a brow, confused. In her mind, sex and courting were as natural as breathing. It was a dragon thing, and Johnny never made her feel embarrassed about it. She had seen both dragons and animals mate. It was only humans that made such a big deal out of it. She didn't understand the why of it, only that she should respect the taboo. Bronwyn had taught her that in one of her many lessons. It's all right, Aiko said, forgiving Precious. She's just being a dragon. I know how that we confuse them sometimes and the way we complicate things. Johnny shrugged. He wanted to tell Aiko he was considering her too, but he wasn't quite sure how to broach the subject. Their past history as brother and sister complicated things. Also, if it didn't work out between them, he didn't want their friendship to suffer. Then again, Johnny thought, making a more dragonish approach to the situation might be the thing to do. If he liked her well enough to court her, then just do it. Simple as that. There was a knock at the door, and Johnny went to open it. Ling, Noah, Namaya, and Isaac came in, followed by Sweetums and Rosie and Gracie, who were looking for Aiko. Rosie and Gracie were a bit smaller and sleeker in form than Goldie. Rosie's fur was solid reddish brown, while Gracie's was solid white except for the pale silver gray marking on the middle of her chest that looked like a slightly crooked cross. They teleported up to the table, and Precious gave them the last 2 cubes of her raw beef to eat. They accepted their gift, and happily munched away after they received greeting caresses from Mako. Goldie took one look at them and decided to ignore them. Their relationship was peaceful enough, but for reasons Johnny couldn't fathom, they didn't care for each other. They were not enemies, just not friends either. Johnny's kitchen was crowded as his family came in to hear their plans. Ling gave Goldie a braided collar with a charm that looked like a dog's ID tag, spelled to snap off should it get caught on anything. Better to lose the charms than accidentally be choked to death by the very thing that was supposed to protect her. She tried it, and suddenly appeared to be the short-haired black dog of no particular breed, just cute and little bug-eyed, with ears bent floppily halfway up. She tried to talk, and all anyone could hear were loud yaps until she remembered to will this illusion to drop enough to allow her words to be heard. Then she let it drop all the way, and thanked Ling for the charm. Precious' charm looked like a heart-shaped locket. When she used it, she resembled the child Johnny had described to Aiko earlier. Only Ling had added more curls to her hair as an afterthought. The illusion was quite cute, but not as beautiful as the original child it hid. Ling was trying to make sure people that noticed her would not bother to look twice because her looks were not unusual. Even her voice was unremarkable through the illusion. They eventually said their goodbyes and left, telling them to call or send rats with letters frequently. Aiko gave her son a long hug and kissed his cheeks. He accepted both, though he seemed a little embarrassed by the public display of affection from his mother, who he loved very much and would miss her while she was away. But he looked forward to spending more time with his dad and getting to know him and his family better. Eventually they parted, Aiko with her 2 rats to their sandship, the Obsidian Horse, to follow Johnny as he headed off for his first destination. He had cargo already waiting for him in the next port of call, thanks to the contact mirrors. His colleagues all had the pre-arrangements completed.